Welcome back to the Mr. Gloat podcast. Today, well, let's just try to relax because, okay, so I made some changes. So I was going to say to myself, I was going to think about making 10 episodes every month. I made a lot in July, and I kind of regret doing it because I should have taken a break for vacation. So, what I'm going to do for the month of August, September, October, and November. December, January, those months, I might do more than 10 episodes. But from August, September, October, November, even though 3 of those months are going to be school vacation, and I might go to fairgrounds and something like that for agricultural reasons, and maybe go to the beach until fall comes because I wasted so much time doing YouTube content that people don't care about watching. But I think it was better because I was already trying to ask for people on podcasts. And I think it's better for me to relax because my voice is damaged up beyond repair. Which is probably for the better for me to take time off. So, as of today it's 4:03 p.m. It's August the 8th. And looking up on Box Live, wow, that's a lot of interesting information. Okay, so this entire 40-minute video isn't going to be entertaining, so you might not be entertained by none of the stuff I'm going to talk about in this episode. If you want to click out, that's fine. Just don't make any comment hates because if you're a fan of boxing but you're not a fan of this video, then don't comment on it. If you're not a fan of boxing, why would you even comment in the first place? I would still reply to you and even ask you for a Zoom call because Opie and Anthony and Sam and Norton and Jim Roberts would do the same thing. So, but we're not doing that, even though I'm interested in doing it. So in August, September, October, and November, I'm only going to record 7 Mr. Gloat episodes. As of today, the Jake Paul promotion of Jake Paul and his next professional promotion is happening today. And as I'm recording this video, I'm just going to make this video short and sweet. I'm going to take my time just talking somewhat quiet and less energetic because I've over talked so much last month ago in July. I just used up all my energy, which is something that we all have to understand. So we have to control our breathing, and that's the truth. So here's the reports of what's going to happen in the month of August and what I'm going to review. I did record an episode a couple of days ago, but it was so terrible. My energy was low, so I'm deleting one of the episodes that's originally should have been episode 60. For edit reasons, we're going to take that easy for now, for today. For everything going on, it's going to be a doozy. That's basically the most interesting thing I could say the entire episode. So what do we have here for the month of August? Well, I will say, though, we have more boxing fights. Like, it's kind of funny that last year ago in August, we had Mizuki Hiruta, Yasmin Artiga, both of them super flyweight champions, even though Artiga lost her title a month ago and Mizuki is still champion. And another male boxer also had a fight. I think it was one of the WBA belts, which is kind of funny that there were only 3 world titles that happened in August, which is kind of funny to even replicate on that craziness. But yeah, we have more titles for the month of August, which is crazy. I'm going to review so much to talk about. So just this recent, I will review Jake Paul promotion, which might be my 4th episode. And then around the next week, after that, on the 15th of August, we're going to talk about Clarissa Shields, We're having a fight with her and Kay Scott, and Kay Scott's former rival opponent, Desiree Robinson, is taking on Tam Thibault tonight. So we have those two fights for both unified middleweight championships, and we even have Chinurka Johnson and Dina Thorson tonight, which, to be honest, I will say this, though, about that title. Dina Thorson was a great woman. Even though her defeats against Shannon O'Connell and Ellie Scottney might have been sufferable defeats in her career, which is sad. And because Chinurka Johnson really showed herself as an entertaining woman when it comes to the weigh-ins and the way she promotes herself and she exposes herself much. And her utter defeat against Ellie Scottney was the most depressing thing to watch. And even though she came back, went back down to bantamweight, became champion, had a rematch against the same fighter, took on Shredda Metcalf to become undisputed last year ago when Dina Thorson had a pregnancy, so she had to vacate all her titles. And then December was another great win for Chinurka. I will say, though, it's been 2 years since Johnson was champion in the bantamweight for 2 years. I will say, though, it was fun. It was fun while it lasted. She did prove herself as a born New Zealand boxer living in Australia, and her being the first ever Australian and born New Zealand boxer in those two countries to become the first ever female to become undisputed champion, and the way that she was promoted as herself. And even though I do believe Dina Thorson might have to recover because she had to put on weight due to her hiatus, and last January she went up to featherweight, even though BoxRec still promoted her as a bantamweight boxer. And she is a interim WBC featherweight champion behind Tiara Brown and her WBC belt. I will say this, though. It was fun. I don't care who wins the fight. As long as the fight doesn't end in a draw, then who knows? On the other hand, Thorson might do a good job, even though Thorson hasn't been out of her country as much in her career of boxing. And Chinurka Johnson has been around every single continent in her career. So that might affect if Dina Thorson has what it takes to defeat Johnson, because Johnson traveled around countries and countries more than Thorson. And even though Thorson used to be the number one pound-for-pound woman in the People's pound-for-pound, and as of right now, she's number 10, the thing is, the only time she ever fought out of her country was in her first professional fight and her fourth pro fight, which was in Germany. And her 10th professional fight is well in Germany. And those fights were in 2015, and the third one was in 2017. And since then, she hasn't fought out of the country since. And now she's in the USA, which she was going to do it last year ago. So, again, her 11-year pro career, if Thorson at 32 years old doesn't defeat Chinurka Johnson, which is possible because, again, Johnson has been out into the spotlight. She's boxed for 9 years, and if she boxes this year, this will be her 10th year. She has showed herself the beauty and the decency of herself, even though I don't like the tattoos she weared. The 31-year-old fighter has proven herself pretty much. And even though she has fought in her country of Australia most of the time, and her utter defeat against Ellie Scottney happened in the UK, and her wins against Shredda Metcalf and Amanda Gali in 2025 were both in the USA. Great for Jake Paul promotion to put her over. So, considering this is Dina Thorson leaving her country, out of the country for the fourth time in her career, this time in the USA, is that going to affect anything? It might. Which is why I'm a little bit afraid that this fight might go down to Chinurka Johnson winning the fight because of it. But again, Thorson, I do believe, is a better woman. But if she can handle the environment, which I do have a feeling that her mind, she might actually handle it for how many years she has left in her boxing career, because both of these girls have fought for a decade. So we might first see the first ever Denmark fighter to become undisputed champion. So it's possible. It's possible. Okay, so it's considered it's only been like 10 minutes since I've already started this episode, and even though I'm just taking it easy for now. Um so my fourth episode this month will be this Jake Paul promotion MVP W05, and my fifth episode will be Clarissa Shields and Kay Scott. My sixth episode will be the Amanda Serrano, which is another Jake Paul fight, which is not MVP number 6. It's just Amanda Serrano on the 21st of August taking on some fighter that I don't really like from Argentina, which the entire fight card for that might be my least favorite. And there is another one happening on August the 29th for Jake Paul promotion, but I'm going to go for that one in September because it's on the 29th. But yeah, those will be my 6 episodes. Um, and then after that, I might upload a late episode in August or something, even after the last Jake Paul promotion for this month, and just to talk about in another event because I'm done. I'm not gonna review any UFC events or something like that. And technically, these announcement videos and this other stuff, information that I'm doing right now on camera, is not entertaining. It's just not. Because I would like to review my content is similar like the Deadlock podcast or like the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the Brian, Vinny, and Craig show, how they review each episode of wrestling promotions like they used to do. Like even in 2019 and 2018, they already reviewed so much of the Nitro of WCW from start to finish during its last show. During the start when COVID came into America, they had to take a month off until they finally reviewed it, which changed their act forever. Now, of course, that's the content I try to do. But the thing is, I'm a solo YouTuber, and I've been trying to wait for those opportunities to come. So, again, there's nothing entertaining for this video. And by the way, considering this episode is all about Jake Paul promotion, because that's the only thing I'm reviewing this month. So here's the fights for competition. So we only have a few male fights. Technically, we have 5 male fights and 5 female boxing fights. I forgot. I didn't look up the fight card, so I don't know which is first and which is last. So what I'm going to do for this episode when this whole event's over, I'm going to ignore all the male fights, except the Daniel Perreault versus Aleem Whitfield fight, because Daniel Perreault, the other Cuban fighter, his brother, Lanier, who lost against Jermell Miller a couple months ago by that utter close fight that came around. If Perreault loses his fight against this unknown American fighter that I've never heard of before with a 10-1 record, those brothers just became a waste of time for boxing. It's ridiculous. So that might be one fight I might talk about. And by the way, there is some other interesting fights that are there on the show. Like we do have Shaw Ray Brown L taking on a Mexican fighter as this 1-0 fighter living in Georgia, born in New York. This 20-year-old light flyweight boxer started her pro career a couple months ago in the Jake Paul promotion number 4 in June, same night where Artiga lost against Delgado and Evelyn lost all of her light flyweight titles. So it's going to be a beauty to see this new woman in action again because it's going to be interesting. We even have this other fighter named Sebastian Soares taking on a 9-6-1 fighter in the middleweight, which I don't know much about. Sharetta Metcalf, former champion, defeated Mio Yoshida, which I wish she was the one that took on the undisputed belt for Chineka Johnson. But this Metcalf woman that is now taking on Amanda Gala, who lost against Johnson last December, these two are going to fight in an 8-round fight tonight. Again, Desley Robinson versus Tam Thibault, IBF, WBO, and the Ring Magazine champions. That's all you need to know. Next week, Kay Scott, the WBC and WBA, is going to take on Clarissa Shields, who's going to vacate all her heavyweight titles. If that fight happens. I'm actually more entertained by watching female boxing than anything else. Which is probably more entertaining than ever. As for any other fights, I will review on any other fight. I was going to review old boxing fights. I've already talked about the Felix Trinidad and William Joppy fight in the tournament, and next month I'm already going to do the Bernard Hopkins and the Trinidad fight, and I'm more entertained by reviewing that fight because I'm reviewing every fight right now and putting on notes and talking about this or that, which I might ignore some of the stuff I'll talk about later on when that time comes, because next month is going to be the 25th anniversary of that pay-per-view on September the 29th. I might review it sooner than later during the 9/11, which we're 1 month away from the 25th anniversary of 9/11. And I also have another show I'm going to review, which was also a boxing show that happened in the month of November, which there's a guy that goes by the name of James who lost against a guy named Sven Otka, and he tried to make a comeback after taking on a guy that he once lost against in his early career, actually went to jail. What does it have to do with the whole 9/11 thing? Because there were people of supporters of the 9/11 thing at the time, which were donated in that event. That's going to be one event that I'm not going to be interested in talking about, but you know what? We'll save that for next month, even though the event happened in November. But so I'm already getting more by reviewing out these shows more than September. And I am thinking about just taking time off from not reviewing old shows. But again, it's going to be interesting. It's interesting because I am thinking about even doing professional wrestling shows, which is probably for the best. So with all that being said, yeah, that's about it. So with all this being said, this is the entire event for tonight. Again, Jake Paul is going to California to do August the 21st of MVP Serrano versus Manzer, who is a 14-4 fighter from Argentina. Again, Amanda Serrano is a long reigning winner of the featherweight belts since she was the WBO belt holder in the featherweight since 2019. The only fighters to still hold on to a title that was won in the 2010s, which was in August of 2019. So I think it was August 29th. Was it what month was it from 2019 again? September the 13th, 2019, when she still holds on to that WBO belt. So if this Argentinian fighter wins, that's going to be the end of the 2010s belt holder for all boxers. Again, Serrano is a long-rated winner. She's trying to get to her 50th pro win in her career, so I'll accept it for what it is. It's interesting. But again, this entire fight card here, like we have two male fights, a guy that's 4-0 from Germany named Nelvi Teilfach, taking on a 7-0 Mexican fighter named Salvador Molina, which I guess someone's has to go, so it's a 6-round fight. We have Joycelyn Camarillo, who is a 6-0 fighter with 1 knockout. This beautiful 22-year-old California fighter who has 1 knockout, and that knockout is known for the controversy during last March when she scored a first-round KO at 1 minute 18 seconds against Isis Seo, which, of course, if you people don't know, that was actually the event that still... We don't have information on Isis Seo because she got injured so bad. Even last month ago, she got knocked out in the first round by a body punch, comes into this fight and gets outboxed. And even the referee, Ivan Guillermo, I think he didn't stop the fight because Joycelyn wasn't a knockout fighter. And that sent Isis Seo to the hospital, and she could not defend herself. And with a 1-2 record that got outbeat and hurt, it was painful. So it really was a devastating knockout. And it took her out of a stretcher to the hospital. It's been almost 5 months since that incident happened, and we're even a month later because a month later in April, Lonnie Daniels took on Shadacia Green, and in round 9, she injured out Green, and she got carried out in the stretcher as well. And that whole buildup with her and Clarissa Shields is down the toilet. And with Shields that defeated her former opponent, Franchon Cruz, just last February, and she's still holding on to the other half of the super middleweight titles, and Lonnie Daniels, who Shields defeated her last July in a boring 10-round fight. and she's now holding on to half of those belts as well. Yeah, it kind of makes sense why Clarissa Shields isn't going down to super middleweight. It kind of makes sense why she's going back down to middleweight, because she already defeated those two girls in the super middleweight, and they're belt holders in the super middleweight. I would like to see her fight for those belts, but I can understand why she doesn't want to fight those females again. The fights were boring. It's like I just didn't like it. Oh, and by the way, you know what's crazy? BoxRec also pointed. So on BoxRec, I looked up the champions, and on BoxRec, the championship list is different. But before we get to that, before I talk about that, let's talk about the other fight. We have a 3-0 fighter named Jamel Harvey, who's 3-0, takes on another Mexican fighter. Ashley Felix is taking on Joyson Camarillo. And if Ashley does defeat Camarillo in 2 weeks, I would be surprised, because maybe Joycelyn didn't get over with that horrific knockout that she took on her last opponent. And Shadacia Green, we don't have information on how good her situation is, so those two females are still unknown. We still have our Misfits Championship former champion Joey D. Oliveira taking on Cinderella Linier from Arlington, Texas, who's 32 years old. And this Brazilian fighter, Joey D. Oliveira, 31 years old. If Joey doesn't do nothing interesting in 2 weeks, that's just going to kill the vibe of Misfits boxing for good. So I'm just so controversial about that pay-per-view. By the way, the August the 29th show in the UK and in Birmingham in the BP Post Live Arena, MVPW-06, Chantel Cameron versus Michaela Mayer will be an interesting shot. I'm just going to see that being a win for Chantel because it's in her country. Same thing for Caroline Dubois taking on Amelia Moore, who is a born Connecticut boxer living in Colorado. 4-0, 36 years old. I just see that being a squash fight. Terry Harper taking on another American fighter named Marana Reyes. Squash. Again, I'm just seeing a bunch of squash fights on this show, so I don't know. I just don't see nothing good coming on August the 29th, but you never know. You never know. But by the way, when I actually looked up female boxing, clicked on the champions, and then clicked on the Box Pro World Champion for females, I looked at the light heavyweight, and I clicked on the WBC World Champion of light heavyweight in female boxing, and it shows March the 7th, 2024, Vanessa Lepage Johannesson defeated Abiel Vidal. Now, they counted that as being a world heavyweight champion, but now it's being counted as a light heavyweight belt. So a few months later, she loses against Clarissa Shields, and even though the Wikipedia BoxRec wiki of the fight shows that it says here, quote, 2 titles say heavyweight title, and 1 says light heavyweight. I think this is an error, and they should have all been light heavyweight, which is actually the truth, because at over 168 pounds to under 175, that's not really something you should be proud of putting on the line. Because the thing is, that fight on July the 27th for Clarissa Shields becoming champion, and even though one of the commentators did say after she was given the belts, given the WBC belt, and then they gave her the WBO belt, which was the light heavyweight belt, stated that that was the first time since Sugar Ray Leonard defeated Donnie Lalonde when he won 2 belts that were both WBC. One was a super middleweight, and the other was a light heavyweight belt, making him winning 2 weight classes in 1 fight. Same with Clarissa Shields. But now BoxRec is changing it to now she was a 5-time weight class champion to becoming a 4-time champion. It still shows Clarissa Shields has become champion since winning the WBC heavyweight title since July the 27th of 2024. And the WBC belt is still unmarked as an unknown belt that does not exist in the light heavyweight for women's boxing. And neither does Ring Magazine or the Ring Magazine for light heavyweight, neither in heavyweight. So again, I do find that a little bit confusing there because, and with all that being said, there's a lot of confusion because at the time, Clarissa Shields weighed 174 3/4 pounds. That's at the light heavyweight limit. Because in women's boxing, if you weigh 175 1/4 pounds or over, you're in the heavyweight division. You don't have to be at 200 pounds. They already said that. And as for Vanessa, she was 174 and a half. So both of these fighters were light heavyweight fighters. And Clarissa Shields in this heavyweight fight landscape was fighting 173 and a half, 174 and a half, and 174 in her last three fights after her Vanessa win. Danielle Perkins' fight in February last year ago she was 177 and a quarter. Lonnie Daniels was 170 and a half, under 4.5 pounds at light heavyweight. And Franchon Cruz was 174 and a quarter. So all of these fights, maybe the Danielle Perkins, who was over the 175 mark, would have all been light heavyweight fights. That's how confusing this is. It just really does confuse the mark of all this. It really does. I don't know. I don't know. And even when I looked up the heavyweight for women's boxing, for the heavyweight, and I clicked on it, it doesn't show. So when I clicked on the WBC World Heavyweight Champion for women's boxing, still shows Clarissa Shields champion. What shows here is that the last belt that was won before Shields was Hannah Gabriels versus Martha Lara Gayton, which was just a quick 2-round fight in Gabriels' country, which happened on April the 17th, 2021. And for some reason, under about a few years later, on February the 2nd, it shows Clarissa Shields and Danielle Perkins. So again, this means that BoxRec changed the system, but so technically, this really confuses me. It really does confuse me a lot. So July the 27th, Clarissa Shields was just a 4-weight class champion in the light heavyweight, meaning that the WBC belt for light heavyweight existed when Vanessa Lepage won the belt in March against Argentina. Vidal. It just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous. So technically, I just find this more funny than what it is. Like, I just can't explain it. I really can't explain the ridiculousness of all of this going on. It's just hard for me to laugh at this because it just seems like there's just so much stupidity. Anyway, let's talk about the information that's going on. So on August the 7th, the last updated information here. Nope, we have more information. So Terrence Crawford is back in training with Lester Martinez ahead of his August the 29th fight. Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Oh, hey, looky here. Well, this is some interesting information here. So Tara Moana, another heavyweight boxer I have talked about, interesting punching power, is more than just a name for the heavyweight hitting of all heavy-hitting heavyweights, even though he might be the first legit Australian fighter to become champion, I hope. But it also shows here that Ellie Scottney is confirming Tiara Brown title fight at the 126-pound in her debut for the WBC belt. So Ellie Scottney is climbing out. And I have a feeling Ellie Scottney is going to hurt Tiara Brown. I just don't see Tiara Brown. Tiara Brown is past her prime. The competition resume she had before taking on Sky Nicholson is not good. She just got lucky. So I see Ellie Scottney winning that fight easily. With all this being said, Moses Atama. So yesterday ago on August the 7th, Moses Atama by IBF upgraded the pinpoints of Caballel as the biggest rival. Which is interesting because we have reported that Fabio Wardley wants a rematch with Daniel Dubois, and that's actually a sign that someone is going to die in 2026. It's kind of crazy that not one single boxer this year has passed away this year in 2026, but considering what happened in Japan last year ago where 2 boxers died in the same night is shocking enough already. So it is crazy. But again, Moses Atama is becoming the young, hottest commodity in boxing as a young fighter. Again, I don't understand the Dubois and Wardley rematch targeting for October. I thought that Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua was going to be interesting enough to say that fight would happen, and Frank Warren wants the fight to happen. I don't know. It's crazy. And by the way, while we're on it for title fights, and even though we have 10 minutes left of this episode left, and all of this is about the Jake Paul promotion, we might as well talk about what was happening for the last week of this entire show of boxing fights. So this week of August, and I think I have talked about this during my first few episodes I've talked about this month, but again, I might as well talk about it now. So technically, William Zepeda finally scores a first win with Lamont Roach, where Lamont Roach's last two fights ended in draws. Raymond Muratalla defeated Robson Conceiaco, which is another interesting 12-round fight, which was utter domination. We even had some interesting moments for other boxing medias out there where Mark Chamberlain and Pierce O'Leary put in a tough battle in each other in that 12-round fight. Both guys were battling it hard for the IBO belt at the time last week ago on August the 1st. It was a good victory. It was a good win for Mark Chamberlain to come back from a defeat and a draw to finally become an IBO champion in the super lightweight. It was a close fight for what it is. It makes him rank number 10 in the super lightweight as a southpaw fighter. And again, it brought him back to spotlight. As for everything going on from the entirety of these boxers, Ben Whitaker has already put it on some interesting struts. As we're reporting, he has a fight in October the 3rd. We have Aaron McKenna, who scored his 20th victory, which might be today because he is actually fighting for the vacant IBF World Middleweight title against Itinosa Oliha, who is actually a 22-0 fighter. Unfortunately, Yanibek Alimekouhanioi, a fighter from Kazakhstan who hasn't fought the belt in over a year, has vacated his IBF belt in the middleweight. And if I have to look up his name right now to understand what happened to Yanibek, the reports are still unknown. We don't have any information on Yanibek or why the belt is being vacated. So let me look this up on why the IBF middleweight title was vacated off of him, because I heard about the drug test fails, the other problem. Okay. So on March the 10th, 2026, Yanibek was stripped of the title after failing in a pre-fight drug test prior to his unification fight against Irizlanda Lara. Well, that's interesting because he just got vacated the belt. That fight was supposed to happen during the fall of 2025. And it took him months later to get that belt vacated. So, okay, so we're going to have two new boxers that are undefeated in their 20-0 fights, 22-0 and 20-0. And this is going to be interesting. We're going to find this going to be really interesting for a new boxer in that middleweight to become champion. It's also been a year since Aaron McKenna actually fought in August of 26, which was around the time during the same event last year ago when Chris Eubank defeated Conor Benn in that close fight. So it's going to be interesting to know what's going to happen here. So with all that being said, with the whole Earl Spence Jr. fight and how that became a failure, other fights going on from David Naika, another guy that's trying to make his comeback from his Jayo Pataya defeat. And also other fighters going on in the business here of boxing. We have Callum Walsh taking on Tyler Denny in another fight. And again, August the 8th. This is taking place in Ireland as we speak. And by the way, Katie Taylor is also fighting as we speak, going on in Ireland next month. She's been out of the rankings ever since, and she's about to call her quits in retirement in boxing. So as of right now for Ireland, which is live on the United Kingdom Sky of Paramount Plus, mostly 5 out of the 8 fights have already happened today, with Patrick O'Connor scoring a first-round decision knockout, in the cruiserweight scoring his 4th victory. Other fighters from Connor Coyle winning a fight against another American fighter today. So there's only 3 more fights on the show right now as we speak for that. So Ireland, and by the way, this is live on Zuffa Boxing, which is Dana White's Zuffa Boxing promotion, which is kind of surprising. This is Zuffa Boxing number 10 as we speak. And surprising or not, I don't know if this IBF World Middleweight title should even be involved in Zuffa Boxing, because I'm just knowing about this right now, which is funny. So, technically, with all the other fights going on in the division, still trying to wait for confirmation on Oscar Collazo and to see if there's any other fights going on for that right now from other light flyweight titles. And we also have an atom weight. The atom weight division for female boxing is turning up new fighters and other fighters in Japan and other fighters building up. Canelo Alvarez still with the Christian Mbili fight. We're still trying to get stuff on that for October the 31st. It's going to take a long time for that to come. And again, with all these other fighters going on, with Diego Pacheco, Jacob Bank, like, these 2 guys in the super middleweight should deserve their competition. And with Demetrius Andrade from Rhode Island coming back after his 3-year hiatus against the David Benavidez fight, with a good win he fought in July the 24th by an utter first-round KO victory, ranking him back at number 13. I do see Demetrius Andrade might have a couple more years left in him for this, depending on how much of the years took ahead of him. He fought for 15 years since 2008 to 2023, and he's a forgotten legend in the country, in the state of his state of Rhode Island, which is one of the few New England states that does have a professional boxer as a champion. From Massachusetts to Connecticut and the state of Maine, because the state of Maine has a couple champions as well, from Tim Sylvia, who was actually a UFC fighter who used to be born in Maine, and he's the only guy born in the New England territory as being born in Maine as well, in any of the New England states of the Northeast, to become a UFC champion, becoming heavyweight twice. And he's living in another state right now. And Joey Gamache, 2-time or 3-time boxing champion, weight class champion, who never successfully defended the title once in any of those weight classes, was there too. So there's not a lot of bad talent. It's rare to find a boxer born in any of those states to have that talent. You just have to find the right person to help you train them and get them to that opportunity. And that's my only advice I have to say about that. Pretty much. Okay, so with only a couple more minutes left of this episode, and I'm already taking a break. I feel like cleaning up my house right now as more as I should. Oh yeah, and by the way, Lester Martinez already has his own stuff going on for his WBC interim title. He's fighting on August the 29th, which is in another venue, not in the UK, but in Los Angeles, which is also involved with other fights for other people from the territory of South America. But I do find them to be interesting for that as well. With Naoya Inoue and Shakur Stevenson and everything else from Jaron Ennis, even though these fights happened months ago against these guys, and David Benavidez, Rodriguez, I don't know. I'm trying to find if there's any interesting fights here, but none of the top 25 except Jayo Pataya and Saul Canelo Alvarez are actually having fights. And even with all that being said, we also have opportunities here. But again, I don't know. I feel like there should be more to talk about here. But again, I don't want to waste all my energy for that yet. Technically, my final thought is, before we end this episode, is, again, this is my 3rd episode this month. Again, the Jake Paul tonight, we're going to watch. That'll be episode 4. The Quisha Shields fight, that will be number 5. Maybe I might do a 6th episode. I'll talk about something different while before doing the 7th episode. I might do a 6th episode of something else on the 20th. Maybe a day before the next Jake Paul fight for the Amanda Serrano fight. And then maybe a week later, I'll just go through that episode next week. So this is going to be a short month. I will do some short videos in the future, but stay tuned for more update, and we'll be right back after the Jake Paul MVP W-05 pay-per-view is set. So with that being said, we'll see you in the next video.